Hello to Weather and Ag in Focus from Montana. Yep, I'm on the road again. I'm Ag Director Bridgette Readel, and I have no problem keeping track of what's been going on in Montana and at home. Sounds like we had some rain this morning. Now I missed it. So I'm going to have to rely on all of you to give a call and let me know what happened in that rainstorm this morning. Love to hear from you. You can reach me on the JLA Insurance phone line. Oh, check that. You can reach Addison, who lets me know that you're calling, and you can reach me at 701-293-9000. But I will watch for your emails, ag@flagfamily.com. And those live streams up and running. Acres TV, Facebook, YouTube, and that's brought to us by Lighthouse Commodities, similarly to how our phone line is sponsored by JLA Insurance. Nate Thorsrud, he's a farmer too, up there in that Grandin area, and he'll be happy to make sure to hear from you and answer all of your crop insurance questions when you reach out to him. So weather-wise, currently in Fargo, all right, I'm updating, I'm looking, 71 degrees. What a lovely day. It's not terribly hot as of now, but supposedly we're going to get to 79. Now, you've had your chance of showers, but you're looking at an overnight low of about 55. Wednesday, going to ratchet right up to about 82 with overnight lows the next few nights in the 50s. Friday, we're going to get to 81 and a chance of showers on Saturday. Now, through the morning shows when I was on earlier today, I heard we might get to Sunday with literally very little rainfall and probably some 90-degree temperatures. So for those who have been waiting to take the boat out, get ready to go, this is your traveling Tuesday forecast. It sounds like later in the week is going to be just ideal. So take advantage of that however you might be able to. Glad to have you join me today. So much is always going on in agriculture. And here in Montana, I am very much enjoying the opportunity to go ahead and visit with a number of our folks that are in the ag industry. I love the fact that I get the chance so often to visit with people that really, get to see a different walk of life, if you will. I get to spend more time talking to farmers and ranchers in different areas. It was fun to see blooming canola on my drive yesterday, as well as the fact that really it's green, mostly all the way out here to Billings. You don't see that every year now, do you? Well, let's talk about some other things that you might not see every year. Let's get into some of those headlines that are happening across agriculture these days. First and foremost, there's been a lot of corn that's been side dressed as of late. And with that side dressing comes the fact that what's our window of time? Now, when we talk about side dressing, we often focus on what's the right size and stage of the corn in which to do that. So as I am checking all of my constant tabs and so forth on my phone, one of the things I wanted to look at was when you think about how do you stage the corn for side dressing, you think about collars. And normally we think about like a V6 is the most optimal growth stage for side dressing corn. So let's explain what both of those things mean. First of all, V6, when you start from the bottom of a corn plant and you count up, the most fully developed leaves that have that clasping collar around the stalk, those are considered our full leaves. And when we have 6 sets of them, we get to V6. And at V6 stage is kind of our time when we look that the corn plant's only taken up about 10% of its total nutrient requirement for the entire season. So what's the actual time where we should be side dressing, which means adding extra nitrogen to our corn crop for that season? Well, in the past, we've always kind of relied on the timing of the calendar more so than anything. But now, Don Kaiser, he's with the University of Minnesota Extension as a nutrient management specialist. He says that recommendations from Minnesota really call for side dress applications to be wrapped up by that V6 growth stage, not because the crop is already using large amounts of nitrogen, but because that's when the nitrogen is most needed by the crop. Nitrogen is probably one of the most sought after nutrients that corn crop might in fact need. By V5 to V6, remember we're talking about the vegetative stages, that's what that V stands for. Vegetative growth stage 5, vegetative growth stage 6, vegetative growth stage 6. Bridget has a cough drop in her mouth and she might have slurred that a little bit. But anyway, thank you so much, Addison. I like your believe in me. I do appreciate that. So corn's taken up about 10% of their total seasonal nitrogen requirement. But by then, the crop's demand curve starts to turn sharply higher after that. So when you talk to some of our seed companies, they report that corn nitrogen starts to build once the crop hits the V8 growth stage. That's the 8-leaf collar. And between V8 and VT, which is when our corn tassels, there's a rapid vegetative window that can take as few as 30 days. Corn takes up roughly half of its lifetime needs for nitrogen. And the most rapid uptake period that occurs for corn is really between that V10, so 10 colors on corn, and VT, which again is the tasseling time frame. So are we staging our corn correctly when it comes to adding in our nitrogen? We can double check that and take a little look. Not only is the University of Minnesota Extension willing to help with their nitrogen management specialists, so in North Dakota would include our specialists at North Dakota State University for Extension. Let's talk about mosquitoes. Now, many of you who've listened for a while know that I lost my dad to the West Nile virus back in 2013, and I'm an advocate for mosquito control in all forms. One of the best ways to protect yourself is definitely with using DEET. DEET is a personal protective equipment for many people, right? We can spray that on ourselves to prevent ticks, flies, mosquitoes, and so much more. But what if mosquitoes are realizing that DEET is just the signal for lunch? It's the gold standard. DEET's what we all use and have for generations to protect ourselves. Even though Grandma thought that Skin So Soft from Avon was doing it, maybe DEET was better instead. So here's what's going on. We have some researchers in France working with the Virginia Technical Institute, and what they are looking at is they took a piece of fabric and they kept the mosquitoes on one side of the fabric. In one way, seems cruel to the mosquitoes, but yet they were in some training. And then they went ahead and they put a bag of blood on the other side of the fabric. Now, that sounds frightening in itself because let's remember, this sounds kind of gross. There's a bag of blood waiting for mosquitoes. And the mosquitoes always wanted to get to the blood. They could smell it. And then what they did was sprayed some DEET around the bag. And so those mosquitoes, those single cell brain organisms, started to realize that the smell of DEET was like a dinner bell, and they started heading for the DEET, knowing there was food on the other side. So one of the researchers volunteered his hands, and he sprayed one hand with DEET and one hand was not. And when he stuck his hands behind the curtain where all of the frantic mosquitoes were at, nearly 60% tried to take a bite when they smelled a whiff of the DEET. And when the team offered those trained insects the choice between the DEET and the non-DEET, they tried to bite the DEET-scented hand. Now, look, I don't need researchers training mosquitoes to go after me. And for some of you who constantly say, mosquitoes just like me, maybe there's something to it, even if you're wearing bug spray. What if they know that you're the chosen one for lunch? Could be, maybe not. Are we overusing DEET? In some instances, folks can say yes, because insects start to build resistance to insecticide antibiotics, insecticide active ingredients, even like DEET. But the reality is that for the most part, when you think about DEET and how it's used, it's still the gold standard of what we do for mosquito protection throughout the summer. Now, many of us are just having some of these short-term showers, pop-up rainstorms, if you will. Meanwhile, we have an area from about Wimbledon, Daisy, North Dakota, up through Devil's Lake that have gotten heavy rainfall. In fact, they'd like no more rain for the rest of this month for sure. And in that instance, we have to remember to use DEET, long sleeves, dump out extra rainwater where it might be sitting that could allow breeding for mosquitoes, and whatever we can do to prevent the breeding and the transfer of disease from mosquitoes to humans. DEET still protects many of us, but there may be some things changing in the future. So we're going to look for other methods as well. Again, I'm a big advocate for mosquito control. I don't think anyone else needs to suffer through a situation with West Nile virus like my family did. You want to talk to me about that? Well, you're welcome again to reach me, ag@flagfamily.com. But first of all, we're going to take in the livestock report from the American Ag Network, and we'll be back. That is indeed the call to action for On the Auction Block with Steffes Group. And we are joined today by Brad Olstad. Oops, Brad, I'm sorry about that. But I
I've
bet
been
that
called
happens more
worse.
than once, doesn't it?
It sure does. Well, a lot of people
Oh,
don't know, but my mom is the oldest Steffes, so there is a little family history there.
I'm not completely wrong then, is what you're telling me.
Exactly right. So you're forgiven.
Thank you, Brad. Hey, how was that Sealy retirement auction at Regan last week?
I tell you, it was really fun to get behind the microphone again. It was last September when we were out at Galesburg, North Dakota for the Steve Erickson Farm Retirement Sale that I was behind the microphone at a farm sale and very well attended. We had a beautiful rain that morning of the auction, so nobody could do any field work or spraying. And we had people from all over the country. Quite surprisingly, the combines were and the trucks were the star of the show, but very well attended. And considering the late model equipment that was there, the prices were very, very good.
All right. So, how encouraging is that? If you're someone thinking about having a sale later this year, do you feel like there could be a big change in the next, let's say, 6 weeks, or would this be the time to call Steffes and say, we should think about a sale because things are going well if you're the seller?
Well, I tell you what, there's a lot of planning and talkabouts in regards to making that big decision. And as you know, market trends right now with commodity prices and interest rates and things like that, making a $500,000 purchase or a $400,000 purchase is a big, big decision. And with this sale being in June when the crop is not made yet, it's looking good. We felt that there's some strong optimism going into the fall. But bushels and commodity prices are our biggest driving factor to how the equipment sells in the fall and the spring of next year. So we're cautiously optimistic. We think, like I said, that the opportunity is out there. If you have the wherewithal to make a purchase of this significance, you should be doing it now because the new equipment sales are still down. They're down considerably. They're down 45 to 55%. And once that used market tightens up, the price of new is not coming down. Keyword, not coming down. So with these discounts built in right now, it's a heck of an opportunity for the producers that are out there in the marketplace.
Do you see any indicators right now, Brad, that would give you a reason to think that you would see a higher dollar point on used combines, or do you feel like we're going to hold steady for a little while? Any thoughts?
I think we're going to be holding steady, and the big question mark is going to be is how is the market going to withstand these higher-hour combines? When you
Mm-hmm.
consider a 45-foot draper head or a 50-foot hinge draper head, you got 18-row corn heads and you got 200 bushel corn. There's a lot of volume that's going through these Class 8 and Class 9 machines, and the cost of repair is going to be a big, big concern on those higher hour combines. And the only way they're going to get those combines sold is to lower the price.
When you think about trucks right now, is everybody looking for one? Do you feel like that's sort of a hot spot right now that folks might be looking for?
Well, if you're at the Sealy auction, we sold a 2007 Peterbilt for $137,000. They were both beautiful
Whoa.
trucks. The second one brought $117,000. We sold some Freightliners. We sold those in that 30 to 40 range with, 800,000 miles. But they had such a great reputation. They took care of their trucks. They always had them stored inside. And people will come. I mean, we sold equipment to 8, 9 states away from North Dakota, and quality always sells. And when you have a caring seller, you're going to find a caring buyer out there if it's promoted and advertised accordingly.
When you mentioned that about semis, I've got a farmer friend who has pointed out that, for their farm, they just want day cabs. They don't need sleepers. They just want to find the day cab. How hard is it to find a good day cab tractor or good tractor semi these days?
Well, I tell you, it does get to be challenging because there's a lot of requirements. So
Mhm.
if you're out west and you're in the hills, you're going to want 450 to 500 horsepower at a minimum. Here in the valley, I mean, you can get away with, 450, but everybody likes power. Power is your friend. And, maintenance history is also very, very important. You get some of these fleet trucks that are coming in, and it's all based on specs. A lot of guys in the valley like the automatic day cabs. Anybody can jump in and drive. They're very sought after. But you also need to have the specs that can reflect what the farm trailer is going to be on it, or the implement trailer that's going to be on it. So it does get to be a challenge for some of these producers. They say, well, that's a cheap truck. Well, you get what you pay for if it's a small engine or light frame and weight and those type of characteristics in a truck. So you got to be careful when you're out there shopping for a truck.
I appreciate that because the things you got to look for matter, right? I mean, you can't just decide I'm buying a truck and not have any history. And there's probably still a fair amount of folks that are thinking, I want a pre-def truck more than anything.
That's a big driver. The emission thing is a huge driver. That's why those Peterbilts brought so much money. They were all pre-def. The trucks, the Freightliners that sold very strong were all pre-def. Even the Kenworths were pre-def. And when you get that pre-def in a statement of selling a truck, you're going to grab people's attention.
Well, and there's more than a little bit of attention. And hey, let's talk a little bit about this Red Power Roundup in Huron, South Dakota next week. Are you going down for that? Do you have an interest in taking a peek at some really awesome vintage tractors?
I tell you, I'm not going to be down there. I'm going to be at another location, and but the vintage tractor deal is very, very an interesting topic because it brings people from all over the country. They get to witness and see some of our heritage, and it's an excellent opportunity.
Sorry, had to sneeze, Brad. So I'm
Yeah,
better now.
bless you.
um,
Bless you.
hey, how do you handle that as an auctioneer? Do you ever have to sneeze like when you're in the middle of chant?
Oh, I tell you, sometimes you really got to fight it. I've been blessed where I haven't had to do the big achoo in front of 500 people, and sometimes you just got to really condition yourself. So, but we're all human. We all sneeze, so you can't be faulted for
Well,
that.
I'm sorry to take us so off topic, but that happened completely out of the blue. Okay, so back to the Red Power Roundup for a minute. There is a huge contingency of IH scouts showing up in here on South Dakota later this week for that event. And I'm curious, do you see many scouts coming to auction? Do they tend to hold their value for collectors or just the average Joe who wants them to check their pastures?
There's a lot of interest there. So it's always interesting to see what people are thinking and that opportunity that's out there. So I think it's a great event. I really do.
I'm looking forward to hearing all of the feedback from it because I'm going to get home from Billings, Montana just in time to maybe turn around and get down there, but I'd love to see it all. So, Brad, is there an upcoming auction that you can't wait for people to know more about?
Oh, I tell you, we got our online sale closing tomorrow. We got a lot of good things happening there. We're very busy with some. We had a good sale today for the Benedict family. And just check out our website. We're booking sales every day and we're talking to people, and that's our business. We're a people business. And when people have things to sell, we think we have a good platform and a good sales staff, and we can take care of their wants and needs. And looking forward to talking with people. We really are.
All right. Well, for those who are thinking about buying or selling, how can they reach you at Steffes Group?
Well, they can check it out on our website, or they can call our main office here at 701-237-9173 and steffesgroup.com, and they can see all about what we've done since 1960. And we're a family company that's growing and scaling, and we'd love to hear from you.
Brad, I so appreciate you coming in and being able to share and just roll with all the things that we talk about. So thank you, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day.
You as well. We had a beautiful rain today. Boy, everybody's happy.
I'm glad to hear that. Oh, wait, except unless you're from like Wimbledon to Devil's Lake, then you're already a little damp. Wear your water wings
Yeah,
out in there, folks.
I'm afraid so.
All right. Everybody hang on. We're going to catch the news, and then we have the drainage difference with Blake Sunday. We're going to hear what's happening at all sorts of conferences and what's coming up for new tile installations. And today it is the drainage difference with landmark companies. We are joined by Blake Sunday. And okay, Blake, you have recently been to a conference all about drainage, I would imagine. And tell me what you learned.
Actually, it was not about drainage, Bridget. It was about it was called American Clean Power. It's about a renewable energy in
Ooh.
America. So it had a lot to do with wind farms and solar farms. But we are getting a heck of a lot of questions and requests for support on projects like those with existing drain tile and or adding drain tile to them to obviously maintain water level and ground conditions throughout the projects.
Okay, before we talk about how you're going to do more with drain tile around those projects, tell me what you learned. What sort of things were you hearing at a conference where you're talking a lot about wind and solar energy?
Uh, Essentially, we the demand for power is getting such that we need every single source of generation of power that you can get your hands on, and even with that being said, with these data centers and everything that's going on, uh, it's going to be a tall task to meet the actual demands. I didn't realize it, but there's places in the country that you know, I'm a developer and I want to build this apartment building, and they say, no, you can't because we don't have the power to support it. And I just didn't realize that existed in the country, but it does. So,
I had no idea. Does that happen close to us?
I don't know about the demographics on it, Bridget, to be honest, but I would suspect it's more in the larger cities than up in the Midwest here, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay, that's a fair question. That's a fair statement as far as your response is concerned. And so, as you look at that, how does what you do with drain tile and boring, because let's talk about some of the other services that you offer with landmark companies, how does that play into what's happening with some of those energy projects?
Yeah, so the directional boring, we're usually part of the collection systems. We do install collection systems, meaning we'll plow or trench the power cables from the substation to the wind towers or to the solar inverters. And then the directional boring part fits in there where you got to get across the road or an interstate or a river or other existing utilities, gas pipelines, whatever. We'll bore those and pull basically a conduit through so that you can get those cables through that conduit to the other side and then continue to go. And then the drain tile portion of it's kind of there's two different scenarios. There's the scenario that the land already has tile in it and they're going to wreck it building this site, whether it be wind or solar, and then you need to follow behind them essentially and fix it, pick up the pieces, and make sure that the system continues to work for the landowner. So we have those situations, and then we also have situations where, hey, we want to build this solar farm on this ground that is not very good, and it's got a super high water table, and it doesn't grow good crops because it's just not a very good piece of ground. So they want to drain tile that whole system, or that whole site, I should say. So we will design our system around their electrical collection system, their pilings for the solar panels that hold them, for their roads, and all of the stuff that goes into building one of those. So when we go in there and do the project, when we leave, they're ready to build their solar farm in this case, and it won't interfere with what we just did.
Okay, I got a lot of questions now, Blake. So when you're talking about these solar farms, and they're going on non-productive land, is what you're talking about here, and does that land ever really return to good production? Because we think so often that drain tile can really restore productivity to a piece of land and make it much more quality. Or is that not necessarily the case with these solar projects? You're just thinking we've got to protect the infrastructure that's sitting there.
I would say it's both, Bridget. Obviously there's a productivity index to the soils, and some soils just
Hmm.
don't grow like other soils. So drain tile essentially isn't going to fix a soil that doesn't have what it needs to produce good crops. So I think it's both.
I think that's probably a fair statement. And I like the fact that when we talk about drain tile with you, we talk about bringing land back into good productivity as we take some of the rain off of it or whatever the case might be, or even some of the subsoil moisture. When you mentioned earlier some of these projects that are going on and you have to go in and fix what gets wrecked for drain tile, does that happen often? That drain tile gets a trench run through it, somebody accidentally didn't know it was there and wrecked it. How often do you have to go back in and fix those things?
For these projects, it's all the time, literally. But like out in our fields, like where we tile in the upper Midwest, it's extremely rare.
Okay, so people generally know where their tile lines are, and they're probably not making a mess of it.
Yeah, I mean, most people are right. Just aren't taking off across, Farmer Fred's field and plowing through his tile. If it's a utility company coming in and putting in a fiber line, they're probably going to be within the right of way anyways, which we typically aren't
Hmm.
tiling in. So, and there's instances where we're going to be out of the right of way, and they obviously have to talk to the landowner, and then the landowner says, "Well, I got tile. Well, who put it in?" And then Landmark put it in. Okay, so then we get them the information they need to make sure that they don't hit it.
Yeah, it's not just like you put the tile in and you leave, right? You're willing to do the follow up after the installation to make sure that that's done well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Um, Permits for boring. Who has to do that when there's a project like that where you have to bore underneath roads to do installations? Is that on you as Landmark or is that on the landowner to get that type of thing done?
So if you're talking drain tile, Bridgette, we would probably get the permit or at least assist the landowner in getting the permit, getting all that stuff lined up. If you're talking a renewable energy project, the EPC or the main contractor that we're working for would pull those permits along with all of his other permits that he's pulling for the collection system and everything else that he needs.
When I hear farmers have tile installed, there is a fair amount of, or there are a fair amount of post installation duties that have to be done. You have to essentially level the field, etc. And I remember riding around with my husband and him saying, that guy does a great job post installation of tile and getting that ready to go for the next crop. What are some of those duties that a farmer has to do after the tile's been installed in the ground to get it ready for the next cropping season?
Yeah, I mean, we supply our customers with what we call a trench closer, and then they put that on the back of their tractor and go up and down the lines, and that brings that plow scar back in over top of what used to be a V'd out spot in the
Hmm.
ground. It's now, let's say, a mound, and you want it to be a little high because obviously it's going to settle. So you leave it a little high, and then obviously if it's a spring job, they're gonna work it and plant right over it. If it's a fall job, I would suggest just leaving it, mound it up a little bit above what it normally would be, because by the time you come back in the spring, it's going to be perfectly level. And if it's a job we did late in the fall where there's a lot of frost, obviously you can't run the trench closer and stuff like that. And sometimes the fields look pretty tough when we're done, and we tell the customer, like, take pictures of it now, come back in the spring after the freeze thaw cycle and the moisture of the snows have soaked in, and you'll be amazed at how much of all of that dirt just fell right back in all by itself.
And takes care of the whole situation.
Yep.
So since since the last time you were here, Blake, for the drainage difference with landmark companies, I did have a question from a listener asking about the tile plows that you use. Where are those built? Are they a specialty order, or is there a company that literally builds tile plows for customers such as yourself?
Yeah, there's a handful of companies I would say that build, and they're literally custom tile plows. They're designed specifically for putting in drain tile. That's what they do. Um, the ones we purchase are made by a company called Braun, and they are made in Woodstock, Ontario, Canada. There's a couple other companies. There's one in the Midwest that makes them. There's another company up in Canada that makes some, and those are your two. There's some that come from overseas, I believe from Holland, but those would be your main four, I would say.
Well, when people see those tile plows in the field, they always attract a lot of attention because, well, it's not a sprayer, it's not a tractor. What is that thing? And they're pretty neat to watch. So, are you looking to stock up projects for the fall once the crop is off, Blake, or how do things look right now over at Landmark Companies to get ready for the rest of the season?
Yeah, we're selling drain tile every day. The tile prices have fluctuated on us multiple times in the wrong direction, going up is what I'm saying. But that they seem to be leveling off, and that's what we're kind of told by our manufacturers. So that's good. But yeah, we are still selling for the fall season. So if you need some drain tile on your farm and you want to mitigate your risk and manage your water, you should give us a call, 218-284-2936 or landmarkteams.com.
And if someone missed all that, they just want to email me, ag@flagfamily.com. I'll put you in direct contact with Blake. Blake and I had a great day dropping off some flags to a number of farmers earlier this year as we flagged a farmer and made sure that they had U.S. flags to fly in their farm shops and off their equipment. And Blake and the crew over at Landmark Companies does a fantastic job of setting up drain tile for so many places in the area. And Blake, thanks for coming in today for the drainage difference.
Have a good day, Bridgette. Appreciate it.
You too, sir. All right, when we return, we're going to touch on some headlines and I will give you my terrible forecast because I'm not a meteorologist. But hey, it's Traveling Tuesday. I'll give you the forecast I got. All right, it is time for our Traveling Tuesday forecast, and maybe that's just because, once again, I'm on the road. Hello to all of you from Billings, Montana, from your ag director, Bridgette Readel. From what I understand, it's a balmy 71 degrees in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and you've had some showers pass through, but you're looking to hit that high today of roughly 79 degrees. Tomorrow, going to be over 80. And as we go through the rest of the week, you'll have that 78 to 82 degree weather. Seems quite mild and nice with evenings down into the 50s. Saturday, some chance of rain. Now, I've been told earlier that's going to blend over into Sunday, but then I heard a conflicting report earlier today that Sunday looks dry and 90. So I have no idea what's happening on Sunday yet, you guys. I'll keep you posted as soon as I find out. But as I said, that's your Traveling Tuesday forecast for right now. Okay, here's what's happening in headlines. First of all, water hemp, the bane of the existence of many soybean farmers. A bit of a problem, I must say. It, as well as other tough weeds, are really forcing farmers to rethink how they're using herbicides in high residue cropping systems. Okay, let's back up. What's a high residue cropping system? Let's say that you are looking at last year's crop and you have a number of corn stalks or wheat stubble left from last year. And with that, you might even be thinking about your thick cereal rye cover crop. And extension weed scientists say that increasingly they're hearing from growers they did everything right when it comes to applying their pre-emergent herbicides, but yet that water hemp still pushing through because water hemp, any chance it gets for sunlight, good soil contact, and moisture will push right through that crop canopy, especially in early season soybeans. So one of the challenges is those fields that have a lot more residue than they used to. How do we make sure to get the residual herbicides to the soil where it's most effective? The assumption is that rainfall will wash herbicides off the residue and down into the soil where it'll do their job. But NDSU extension agronomist who works with NDSU as well as University of Minnesota, Tom Peters, has said really that doesn't really hold up in reality. Most of our performance challenges are related to those herbicides that stick to the residue and don't move. So the problem is on the increase as farmers are dialing back their tillage passes, planting into more corn and soybean residue, and seeding more cover crop. If you are thinking about what should I be doing when it comes to residual herbicides, there's a whole list from NDSU. We got to prioritize that soil contact, things that we can be doing differently, both culturally and with different active ingredients. We got to adjust for our products and our rates, and we really got to tighten the timing. Because residue can blunt the effectiveness of a pre-product, escapes more likely. So smaller water hemp is easier to control once that weed gets to the 4 to 5 inch stage, and as it grows, it gets significantly more difficult. All through my prior career, I talked about the fact that if your water hemp is taller than a pop or a beer can, I don't care which one you're using, I'm talking about 12-ounce can here, guys. Once it's bigger than that, your level of difficulty to control those has gone up exponentially. So we have to use the right timing. Always think about beer can size or smaller when it's the right timing, especially for water hemp to try to control it. And evaluate looking at group 21 herbicides. Really, we've been looking at those as maybe those single active ingredients can be very helpful, especially with the high biomass of cereal rye. And with better results, we'll see what that looks like. So have that conversation with your extension agents, and whether it's in Minnesota or North Dakota, and see what's going to happen best. Okay, well, look, we're getting close to the 4th of July, and there's some great fun facts. I often think about this country as one that was traditionally founded as rural. No doubt our coasts have become much more urbanized, but when I think about what's happened in the rural areas and how that brought forth the United States, I find it pretty important. So it was this week, back in 1775, that the Continental Army was established by the Continental Congress, making the birth of the United States Army more important. 2 years later, back in 1777, the Stars and the Stripes were adopted by Congress and the flag of the United States. So Flag Day is officially the day in the United States. According to legend, back in 1776, George Washington commissioned Philadelphia seamstress Betsy Ross to create the flag for the new nation. To date, there have been 27 official versions of the flag, but the arrangement of the stars varied according to however the flag maker wanted up until 1912. when President Taft then standardized the new flag's 48 stars, making 6 rows of 8. The current version of our flag, well, that happened on July 4th, 1960. That was after Hawaii became the 50th state added to the Union in August of 1959. Flag Day, officially established by a proclamation of President Wilson back in 1916, and in 1946, Flag Day was established by an act of Congress. Even with those actions, Flag Day, not actually a federal holiday, although we celebrate it here at WDAY and the flag. However, it has been recognized by Pennsylvania as a state holiday, and they became the first and only back in 1937 to declare Flag Day as a state holiday. New York started recognizing them in 1930, observed it as the second Sunday in June, and the week of June 14th is designated a National Flag Week. We get a whole week now to celebrate our flag, which is a wonderful idea as we quickly approach what is happening for July 4th and how we celebrate America's 250th. And we're going to do that all through the week as we prepare for more events that are happening across the state. I drove down I-94 yesterday and I went past Medora, and I can tell you that preparations are certainly happening as they prepare to have the president as well as the inauguration, well, maybe not inauguration, but the events that are happening with Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Museum, and many people are now taking the drive through the Theodore Roosevelt National Park because let's face it, he brought us a lot of conservation, and in western North Dakota, it's a big part of our tourism and our agriculture and so much of what we do. I am so looking forward to spending the rest of the week with you. We have guests who are going to be joining us every day. Tomorrow, we are going to be joined by Justin from the Lakes. He'll be on air as we talk about some topics that are quite relevant to farmers, including when you start to see some older farmers out in the equipment and in the field, when's the time to have the discussion? Maybe they shouldn't be there anymore for safety and other reasons. We'll have that talk. Later this week, we'll be joined by veterinarian Dr. Emily Fox from the Ashley Veterinarian Clinic. We'll also hear the highlights of the Red River Valley Fair from Sophia Thompson, and we'll be joined on Friday by our own Ag Commissioner, Doug Goring. Look forward to having you all join me. Don't forget that Jay Thomas is coming up next.